Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another best practice interview ahead of the US Awards 2020 here at IR Magazine. My name is Laurie Havelock, editor at large, and I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Gugino, VP Investor Relations and FP&A for Danaher, the healthcare company. Matt, thank you so much for making the time to speak with us today.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for having me, and thanks for IR Magazine for doing this. We appreciate it.
No, not at all. It's just a shame that we can't be doing, the usual Razzmatazz in New York this year. We'll have to wait. As you know, not news to you, not news to anyone that it's been an eventful year for all of us. But also, I think away from the headlines, even eventful at Danaher. Pandemic notwithstanding. How would you characterize the kind of past year from an IR perspective for you?
Sure, it's definitely been a eventful year for us. I'd say to characterize it, it's been busy, it's been rewarding and humbling in a way. We've been very busy and yet a rewarding year, given that we announced our largest acquisition we've ever done, the GE Biopharma business, in February of last year. Actually, we closed that deal, $21 billion deal. We closed that in March of this year. Is now renamed Cytiva. Really an exciting business, great business, really good team. I'm excited to have them as part of the portfolio, and more importantly, they're playing a really critical role here in the fight against COVID, with some of the solutions they're providing to drug manufacturers that are trying to develop vaccines and therapeutics. So really some great stuff that team was working on. We also announced the IPO and split off of our dental business. We completed that in December of last year. In addition, we've done an equity raise, we've done a debt raise, we've announced a CEO transition. So it's been a pretty busy 12 months here from an IR perspective. I think, and we couldn't be more proud of our team here, both from on the IR side, Kelly Brame and Brian Pfeiffer on the IR team, as well as the broader 70,000 associates that work at Danaher. And I think, I used the word humble at the beginning, just given everything that all of our associates have done really to meet the challenges that COVID and this pandemic have brought on, whether it's the balance between personal and professional life, or those associates going to work every day that are trying to help customers that are in the fight against COVID. I mentioned Cytiva before, but we have a number of businesses that are playing a very central and critical role in that. So very humbling to be able to share their story in a way, and tell the broader Danaher story to the street this year, and represent all those associates that are working so hard for us.
Yeah, well, like you say, a complicated, but I imagine it was perhaps rewarding almost to have a narrative to be able to tell, and be able to help so many people and be able to share that story. Were there ways in which, obviously, you're kind of reaching out to new constituents, I imagine, with the acquisition and the spin-off obviously would have changed your makeup a little bit. Did you kind of use any new tools, methods of outreach? I mean, obviously online tools, I'm sure, formed a large part of that at the moment, but did you shake up the way you're speaking to investors?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did. I think we were probably using the same online tools everyone else is. We're using for this call, right? The Zooms and the Microsoft Teams and the WebExes that are out there. And I think what we tried to do is we tried to play a little bit of an offense in a way, and really get in front and stay in front of investors right away. I think we sort of got those travel bans in early March, and we did a virtual roadshow kind of right away after that. And some of it was just the IR team did, and just to stay face to face and increase those touch points in a way with our investors and analysts. And I think that really helped us. I think the other thing we try to do from a company messaging perspective is be as transparent as we could. I think we gave more sort of intra-quarter or pre-announce updates than we've ever given over the last 5 or 10 years, just to say, look, this is what we're seeing in our businesses right now. Even if we can't predict what's going to happen in Q4 or Q3 of this year or 2021, let's at least stay transparent with investors and analysts. And I think we tried to do that as much as we could, and then use some of those tools, like those virtual tools, to be able to do that, so folks could see our faces, right? It's a people business still at the end of the day, and you need to keep those touch points and those relationships going. And I think we we've tried to do that, and we'll continue to try to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. But maybe looking ahead to the long term, most folks we've been speaking to say, of course, you have to do what's possible at the moment, but there is perhaps no replacing face-to-face contacts. And I can say, from point of view of our events, we missed it a lot here at IR Magazine. Do you think, whether we're probably not talking about whole-scale replacement of face-to-face meetings in the future, but do you think some of these changes will stick a bit? Do you think there are certain types of meetings you'll maybe aim to go online with first, or other things that the pandemic has kind of made you rethink longer term?
Yeah, I think there will be some structural changes that come out of this. I think that's our view, from how we interact with investors, or the number of road shows, or the number of virtual meetings, or the number of conferences we go to, right? Because I think you can be pretty darn productive in these types of settings, but like you said, I think you made an important point, is it's still a face-to-face business. You still need to create those relationships, have those networking events, meet investors face-to-face. It is a people business at the end of the day. I think, though, that you can have those interactions maybe in different ways now. There's going to still be those face-to-face events when we get back to normal, we can get back on the road, but there'll be some more virtual touch points, and some stuff that, maybe, and especially when you think about allocating your CEO and CFO's time, or your senior executives' time, where, hey, we can get them into a conference room for 4 hours and they can do a handful of meetings, and they can still have a productive rest of their day, right? And they can still do all the internal things that they're working on. So I think that we're going to try to be creative here as we go forward. There will be a new normal. Who knows what that will look like? But I think we'll try to take advantage of that. And it's important to, be adaptable, as well as to get ahead of some of these changes. But I'm as excited as you and everyone else that's maybe listening to get back out and be able to have a coffee, or a face-to-face meeting, or a beer, or a dinner, or a lunch with folks, to be able to have that human interaction that's so important. But maybe we'll do some other stuff a little bit differently as well as we go forward.
Yeah, it sounds like a sensible way, but like you say, we're all certainly missing it. Just to circle back to some of those aspects of your busy year, so to speak.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the spin-off of Invista, the dental
Sure.
division. So, that's obviously quite a complicated process, and can be quite a complicated thing to explain to investors, I guess, or at least to tell the story of to investors. What were your kind of personal learnings, your team's learnings from that process?
Yeah, I think we had a couple of pretty good learnings. I mean, we've been pretty active with the portfolio over the last 5 or 6 years. So we had a spin-off of our more industrial assets back in 2016, a business called Fortive that we stood up and created a standalone publicly traded company for. So, we've done some of this before, which I think helped to this go around, so to say, that we had an experienced team that's gone through it, and not just the street aspect of it, but the internal processes of it, that the standard work that we put in place. I think a couple of learnings: the dental business, it was a little bit different business than some of the other businesses that remain in the Danaher portfolio today. And so, in a way, a little bit different investor base it was going to attract, and some of different characteristics that the investors and analysts were going to look for. So I think to be able to adapt and tell the story maybe in a little bit different light than we typically how to tell the Danaher story was constructive for us, and I think was a learning. I think the other thing here too was we promoted some very talented senior management internally that were Danaher executives to be public company CEOs and CFOs and executive vice presidents at Invista. And they had exposure to the street in the past, but in a different capacity. So I think for them, be able to get them up to speed. Hey, here's what investor relations does. Here's what the way Wall Street interacts. Here's what they're looking for. Some of the do's and don'ts and best practices. I think we tried to help them develop and teach them. And also, we were helping them set up their own investor relations department. So it allowed us to take a little bit of a fresh look at our standard work and processes and said, okay, what can we improve on? here at Danaher. Let's help them get stood up on their own, set them up for success. At the same time, it gave us a little bit of fresh look. And I think we took some of those learnings and we're trying to put them into place today as we go forward, because you can always that those are some things that we took away from the IPO and subsequent split off of the dental business.
Interesting. That's a nice way to put it. The kind of the refreshed look. Similarly, speaking about kind of new beginnings, you mentioned as well you've negotiated a CEO transition. I believe that Rainier Blair is coming in from next year, 2021. Is that the
September 1st? So he's got 11 days. Yeah, 11 days to get going here. Yeah. He's excited. We're excited.
Yeah, brilliant. So I guess by the time this goes out, that may have happened, but I wonder what what you're planning to do to get them up to speed and in front of investors at a difficult time, and how you've been communicating this as well during the last year.
Yeah, so within everything, we decided to throw a CEO transition in there as well. But I think that for Reiner, we were very fortunate. He's probably had done the most interacting with investors and analysts over the last 9 or 10 years he's been at Danaher. So I think that was an important part. He was a known commodity, so to say, to the street before we made the announcement. So I think that helped. But we still got the number one question we got, and rightly so. Why are you in this in the middle of a gold pan? I think that for us it was important. Tom Joyce has been our leader for a long time. He's been at Danaher for north of 30 years. He was ready to start that transition to retirement, and he knew that he was making that announcement from a position of strength, right? Given our portfolio, given some of the portfolio moves we made, given our performance where we stood from an execution standpoint. But we thought it was important to get Tom in front of as many investors and analysts right away on that day of announcement or the preceding days after that announcement, to let him tell it from his own mouth, right? For him to really share his rationale. Important for investors, analysts to really hear it from Tom. We started to get Reiner out a little bit as well to make sure that he's getting perspectives from analysts, investors, as well as they're hearing his some of his priorities as he gets into the seat here. So I think it's all about transparency, right? And I think we just tried to be as transparent as we could, and fortunate that Reiner had some experience interactions with investors and analysts in the past. And I think that's a learning here is, you want to showcase that senior management that's below the CEO, CFO level a little bit, because if you do need to go through a transition, you have some folks that maybe have some exposure, right? That helps you internally as well as externally. You've introduced those folks to the investors and analysts in the past. So when they hear that CEO transition announcement, it's the first time they're hearing of that individual.
Certainly. Listen, Matt, I don't want to make you repeat yourself, because I think you've been hitting a lot of these keywords all the way through. But my final question for most folks has been, looking at their own program and considering the wider role of IR going into 2021, what parts of it are you most proud of? What do you think the hallmarks of really great investor relations are that you've got into place at Danaher? I dare say the first point may be transparency, because that's been a point that we've been returning to today frequently. Yeah,
and I think at Danaher, we talk a lot about the IR function. We want to be as transparent and consistent with our IR strategy and messaging as we can, right? And it's been no different this year. It's going to be no different next year and years to come. I think one of the other things here is that at Danaher, we have the Danaher Business System, or it's called DBS. And DBS is not only our operating system on how we run processes on the manufacturing floor, or R&D processes, or sales and marketing, or how we develop leaders, but it's really our culture. And we like to describe DBS as common sense vigorously applied. And I think in a way we take that same approach to investor relations, where we try to keep the messaging simple. We try to put ourselves in the seat of the customer, in the seat of that investor, of that analyst. How are they evaluating things? What are he or she looking for? What are the key metrics that they're trying to understand to make a decision on whether to recommend or not recommend the stock, or whether to buy or sell the stock, right? And I think that understanding that those customers, they're looking at hundreds of stocks at one time, simplify the message, but give them enough information to make an informed decision. And that's sort of how we view things, and something that we really drive to do at Danaher. The other thing too is we know we always can get better. And I think we're always trying to drive ourselves to get better, whether it's looking at best practices of other IR teams out there, or just asking for like voice of the customer internally, voice of the customer from those investors and analysts. And we learn a heck of a lot from them each and every day. And they're not only partners and shareholders, potential shareholders or analysts, but also we really respect what they do, and all the insight that they give us. So I think that we're always trying to learn and improve the function each and every day, and that's something that has been helpful for us this year, as well as hopefully in years to come.
Yeah, certainly. So, well, we certainly recognise it here at IR Magazine, and this year, of course, nominated for a few awards. So hopefully that comes to fruition as well when we get around to those virtually. Matt, thank you so much for your time. We really looking forward to seeing you in person when we can. Everyone here at IR Magazine, and all the best for the rest of the year.
Thanks, Lori, and thanks to everyone that's out there listening. Thanks to IR Magazine. Hopefully everybody has a safe and healthy rest of 2020. And like you said, looking forward to seeing you and the team and everyone in person here, hopefully in 2021.
Fingers crossed. All the best, Matt.
Thanks, Lori. All the best.